I wanted to introduce myself and my guest today, and I promise you he's going to do the bulk of the speaking. You don't have to listen to a Googler drone on for 45 minutes. My name is Ameet Jani, and I want to introduce Antoine. I wanted to do the introduction for one reason. I think the French are very modest. And so he's not going to tell you all the very cool things that Veolia is doing. I stumbled into Veolia when we were on an engineering trip to France. And yes, we do have an engineering team in France. And this is a very modest company that ends up doing, it's a 150-year-old water company, as I describe them, and they are doing the most innovative things that I've ever seen a company do anywhere. So I wanted to get these guys on stage to talk through the story. Like many of you, they are in multiple clouds, and so Antoine was asking, is it okay to show the other logo? And so you will see the other logo on stage, but they run a decent cloud too. And so, but Antoine's going to focus on how they bridge these two worlds and how they use our security solutions to really secure the whole thing. And so I just wanted to do the introduction for Antoine because I think you're going to hear a very great speech today, a talk today about all the cool security things that Veolia is doing. So I'll give it to you, Antoine.
Thank you. Hey, I'm Antoine Castex. I'm the Google Cloud Product Manager at Veolia. And as you have probably heard, and as I may say, I'm French, and so I'm from Paris. I'm here to present you how Veolia is moving to the cloud. And it can be more complex because you will see that we have not a small company, and how we develop new modern application and how we help the employees how we bring the employees with us to use this modern application and modern infrastructure. So, before talking in details about this, probably most of you don't know what is Veolia. And as I say, Veolia is the global and the worldwide leader in optimized resource management. And I have prepared to you a quick video to show you what is our daily job.
Let's transform a cargo ship into chairs, wastewater into heat, and straw into electricity. These are new solutions for resourcing the world.
So now you know what are we doing every day, and you also know that our principal and main mission is very simple: resourcing the world. And by resourcing the world, we say we want to limit the impact on the environment on the different businesses we are working on. So let's talk about where we come from. Probably you know that we are very young because we were born in 1853. First to supply water in Paris, France. After we do the same in France, in Europe, and now in worldwide. Sometimes in the United States too. After this, we create the energy branch, providing solutions for the industry. And just after this, we already have to celebrate our first centenary. And in the last time, in 1986, we create the last branch. It was for the waste treatment. And just some years after this, a very little and younger company you probably know was created. And just in the same time, we create the global name Veolia, as you may know today, regroup these three different branches. So today we are 169,000 people around 50 countries. And we are working on these three main branches. The water, with supplying water for 1 million people. The waste, by recycling millions of tons of waste every year. And the energy, by managing solutions for the industry. This is very complicated, and we have a lot of things to do. So now let's talk about the IT parts, because I think this is why you are here today. And I have chosen to use the same timeline models to explain how was your history on IT, but you agree that it's a little bit younger. And I have chosen to start to tell you on 2012, because at this time we were like other big company, full on-premise. We were having more than 200 messaging systems, and I have chosen to give you the example of France, where we are having more than 10 data centers. we have chosen to create the first biggest program for our employees. And this was to migrate all the users to G Suite. This is a very big change and a very new ways of work. And just 1 year after this program has begun, we were almost 90,000 people on Gmail. That was very crazy because just in 1 year, we were very fast to move the user on Gmail. It was not easy, and I can confirm that because I was in the team in charge of the migration, but it was very amazing program. I have put you some example about the usage we were having at this time, because you can, at the end of this slide, compare with the information of today, and you will see that there is a huge evolution of the usage of the G Suite platform. After this, we create 3 main programs, and I will speak in details about each programs because they are still improving today, and they are Move to Cloud, Data for Business, and SATA-WAD. Just don't forget these 3 names. This is very important. So today, we are almost 130,000 people on Gmail, and you can compare the usage of the G Suite platform. Now, our users use naturally G Suite. This is normal. This is not a problem. And the problem now is when you say why you don't use these services, because this is the best way to do. For example, the usage of the Hangout has a huge evolution of usage. So about today, and to finish this timeline, about tomorrow. Tomorrow is in the next 2 years. And I have put some example about the big points we want to achieve, and they are the migration to Chromebook. I will speak in details about this in one of the 3 programs. Develop, as I say, modern application, web apps, by using Google Cloud Services. Be serverless and data centerless. It's very huge words, and it will have an impact for IT. So you will understand why. I just want to talk to you about the cloud strategy we have. And I have made the choice to choose only 5 main points. And I hope my boss, who is here, will agree that they are not the only 1 point, but this is very a quick presentation. So I don't need to speak to you a little more. So I have chosen to speak to you about these 5 points because I think they are very interesting. First is no ops. And what we say with no ops, we say we want to let our developer, like me, to focus on the code and not on managing the infrastructure. We think Google is doing this very good. So why we need to spend some time on this? We choose to use the maximum microservices we can use to reuse again and again these services. We use Cloud Function, we use App Engine, we use a lot of services. I will show you some architecture diagram after this. You will see that is true. So no ops, of course, means serverless, because Cloud Function is a serverless services. And at the end, that means no data center. From this year, we want to have no data center in France in the name of Veolia, and in the next 2 years, it will be the same all over the world. So by doing this, we use Google Cloud products. This means secure by design products. We want to have secure by design application, and this is why we choose App Engine, we choose BigQuery, we choose Cloud Function, we choose all services provided by Google. And yes, as Ameet said, we have made the choice to only have 2 different cloud providers, that are AWS and GCP. So I have the authorization to put the logo on this presentation, so there is no problem. Now, about the 3 programs I mentioned before. We want to create a digital enterprise. And create a digital enterprise is not as easy as speaking to you today. These 3 programs have a lot of different details, and I have chosen to only regroup these details in 3 boxes. The first is the Move to Cloud program. The Move to Cloud program is for the IT entity, for the branch, and we want to help them to move to the cloud. For me, the biggest keyword of this program is software as a service first, because we think this is the future. And as I say, we don't want to manage infrastructure, we don't want to manage. We just want to focus on the application and on the customer added value we can have. The second program is Data for Business. And Data for Business, for me, means data lake, because the data is the key of your application. And the last one is SATAWAD. And for SATAWAD, and I will talk to this in details after this slide, for me, it's collaboration. SATAWAD is for the employee, and we want to, as I say, bring them to a new modern world of application and a new modern ways to work. So, in detail, SATAWAD, what does that mean? SATAWAD means secure, anytime, anywhere, any device. And it's very simple, because as you may know, on your company today, your employee may want to work from anytime, anywhere, and any devices. They don't want to be they don't want it to be mandatory to work at the office. They want to work from home. They want to work from where they want. So we propose a global migration program to Chromebook. We propose to give a secure and collaborative workplace. This is why we have chosen to use G Suite for the messaging system. The second program, Move to Cloud, is for the IT entity, and for the entity too, of course, because we want to help them to go to the cloud. We are on a decentralized company. It means before we were on the model when we say, hey, this is mandatory, this is the new way, you need to work like that and not like that. But now we are not on this way. We are on a seductive adoption. We are on a way where we say, hey, you can make an evolution of your IT. You have some offer like this, some offer like that. We can help you. We can make this for you. We can give you an advice. We can give you a support. It's your choice. And this is not the same way to work. And you can trust me, this is a very more better way to work. So this operation can be made on 2 steps, because sometimes we have a landscape of application very difficult, because companies like Veolia are older companies, so they have a big legacy of application. So we propose a managed services and infrastructure as a service solution. But the final jump to the cloud for us is, as I say, the solution as a service and the platform as a service. If you want, you can develop an application, or if you don't want, you can buy a solution that is ready to go. How we do that? We do that in some steps. I have chosen to resume them in 6 steps. But quickly, we help them to discover between what is the application they have and what are the offers they can choose. After this, we help them to design a new architecture of the application. We propose them to help them to build a new version of this application, to transform this with us or with some Google partners, of course, if you want. And after this, we are going with them to choose who will be in charge to operate, if this is a managed services that will be maybe a cloud provider like Google, or that can be a third-party company. And after this, sometimes we can optimize the application for the user experience or for the price and the cost of this application. So now you know these 2 main programs. We will speak about the last one. This is Data for Business, but before speaking about the data, I wanted to show you how we use Google Cloud. And today, we are almost ready to say that we have more than 100 applications on Google Cloud. It can be a very simple and small application to a very big and complex application. And I will present to you some demos of applications we have made. And this represents 500 App Engine services, for example, and almost 5,000 BigQuery dataset. But the interesting point on this is the security. But as you can see on my slide, we have 1,000 projects, and 1,000 projects, you can trust me, is very big. You need to secure, you need to monitor, and you need to check that everything is okay on your infrastructure. By infrastructure, I mean Google Cloud, the platform, of course. So we have a lot of AAM policy to do that. We have a lot of firewall rules. We are using a lot of different services, and I will speak in details about these services at the end of my presentation. But now you know how we use Google Cloud. Let's talk about the data. because, as I said, the data is the key, and we think in Veolia that having a data lake is mandatory. And you can see some interesting white paper on Google Cloud website on this, and it's very close to our approach. And you probably ask me about why we choose Google Cloud and why we create a data lake. And I will answer to you that a data lake for us is having a central point of data from whatever they are to analyze, process, and extract an added value of this data. And why we choose Google Cloud? It's very simple. It's because it's very cheap, this is very fast, and this is very easy to use. So, how is made our data lake? In just 4 main steps. First, we acquire the data, as I say, from whatever they are, from application, from other cloud provider, I didn't mention any name, from user data, from the businesses, or from your IoT. I have chosen to make just 4 examples, but you can have a very big list of data. At this day, you can see that we have almost 80 different data sources around the world. And after we have acquired this data, we store this without modification on storage, on cloud storage, because we think it's very important to have an history of each data we will modify after this step. And as you probably know, the storage is very cheaper today on the cloud. So why don't just put the storage on cloud storage and have this if sometimes you need to have a go back or a modification list to check. This represents about 50 terabytes of storage today. And after this, we make the most interesting point. This is the analyze and processing part. We use the classic, as I say, classic pipeline data from GCP. We use Cloud Pub Sub. Cloud Pub Sub is notifying data flow. We process data flow every month a lot. You can see some numbers of the usage we have. And we send this data to BigQuery. This represents about 60 billion of records. And we are very happy to use BigQuery. We have a big team of experts on BigQuery. And after this, we can choose to export this data and bring them to external application, web application on Google Cloud, on-premise application. Data Studio is an example if you want to make some dashboard, because we use Data Studio to make some interesting dashboard. Where you want, because you can open API and give this data to external application, as I say. So, to present you a demo of how we use this data, I have chosen to present you Synoptic. Synoptic is an external module of the data lake, and it will permit Veolia to monitor the equipments we have on a treatment plant for the waste or the water, for example. So, it means you will be able to see, for example, how is the amount of water I have in my water pump today, from now, and other very interesting points. This application is made on 3 steps. First is acquire the data from the data lake, and we get an SVG representation of all the equipments you will have on the treatment plants. Second step is to prepare this. So we merge the data of the data lake with the SVG representation to create a final representation we will present with App Engine. After this, you can see how this application is. This application is on App Engine, and we use Angular framework for the front end. So the Veolia's employee can show, as I say, in real time, what are the equipments they have on these treatment plants. They'll be able to choose which city they want to monitor. In this example, we have some cities in France and some cities in Germany. But that can be very simple or very complex. It depends on the size of the treatment plants and what they are doing. So you have a lot of information. They are loaded from the data lake every minute or second. It depends on what you need. And you can click on an equipment and have a more detailed information what you have on this equipment. And as you see on my video, I have clicked on an information, and I have an historic of this data. So it's requesting BigQuery to say, can you give me the history of this information from the last month? You can use this data just for your information, and you can use an export of this information. So a basic front-end application, but a very complex back-end application. So my second example is not on the same way, but it's very interesting because it's an application, its name is Clear, which permits to monitor the gas dispersion in the atmosphere you have, provided and makes by a treatment plant. And if you live near a treatment plant, you can be afraid if there is not a problem today. Maybe in the industry, sometimes you can have a problem, and this application is here to confirm that there is not a problem. Why this application is very interesting? Because they use the both cloud provider. And you see that I have made the icon. Thank you, Ameet. First, we collect the data by two ways. Get the data from the weather station, because they can have some wind or some rain. And we get the data from local sensor all around the treatment plants. This is on the Veolia responsibility to say if they want to have 10 or 5 local sensor, but it depends on what you want to monitor. After this, we store and we simulate, we generate the panache. The panache is the cloud representation of this gas dispersion in the atmosphere. We sum this data to Google Cloud to create, with Google Map, the representation we will display on App Engine. As I say, we use a lot of App Engine, and you can see that it's confirming. This is the demo of this application. In green, you see the point are the local sensor you can find around the treatment plants. You can choose different type of sensor and different type of gas. And in red, you can see in real time the representation of this dispersion. This was the first version, and now we are on the new version of this application, and the cloud is more beautiful. For the first version, it was not very the most beautiful we can, but it has evolved from now. You can have the version of the maps, and you can see if your home is at the right. Maybe you have recognized your street, I don't know. And you have a different type of information. As I say, it can be very technical, so you can have also technical information about each sensor, about where they are, about what the data they have collected. You have an historical of this data, also taking from BigQuery from the data lake. And like Synoptic, you can use this data to make an export or reuse in another application, of course. These are very easy to use application and not complex, to understand how to use it. So now it's time to speak with Ameet about BeyondCorp, and after I will be back on the scene.
Thank you, Antoine. Thank you, Antoine. So the question you're asking is, he's created all this great data, he's created all these great front ends. How does he make sure that the right people are accessing this kind of information? And so to do that, I thought I could quickly give you a quick summary of what BeyondCorp is. About 10 years ago, Google decided internally that we wanted to get rid of VPNs. We decided there was this idea that no network was really truly safe. And in fact, the way to really guarantee that every request is actually legitimate is to do an evaluation of each request. And so from that point, we've moved all of our tools from behind a VPN into the world. We deployed it on the web. This is including things like our code search, where we store our search algorithms and things like that. And the idea should be that that's false security, and we should make a request on how everybody's request looks at that time. So let me walk you through an example of what that looks like. In our BeyondCorp idea, we think of really three things. One is that you, the enterprise, need to set policies. These are rich policies that say, these are high-trust applications. Maybe these are cafe menus. Anybody can access it. Those are the kinds of rich rules you have. And what does that mean? Where IP address am I coming from? What does my device look like? What's the time of day? These are the types of attributes that we want to collect when somebody's making a request. And then going through and cataloging what are the applications and data that we have and making sure they're all protected. And so all those three components constitute what we call BeyondCorp, or the BeyondCorp vision. And so let's walk through a typical example. There's no revolutionary stuff here if you look at it at first blush. An employee uses some sort of device to make sure that the rules are processed here to say, is this really a legitimate request? It's blocked at an enforcement point, in which case, in our case, we think of it as a proxy. And if everything matches, we in fact allow that end user to access the application or the data. That sounds simple enough, but a lot of things can go wrong and do go wrong for people who try to go at this point. The first one is, how do you really attest that this is actually the employee who's trying to access the information, right? In terms of phished credentials, if you think of their attack vector, the number one attack vector used to access information, it's very easy to mimic who an employee is. Second, even if the user is legitimate, what is the device? Is the device in a compromised state? Is it a corporate device? Is it, is it a tablet? What is it that's going on there? The next thing you have to figure out is, how do I make sure that the rules I've applied against my applications are legitimate? Are they overprivileged? Is the network path vulnerable? And then you have to collect all this information together and see, should an access decision be made or not before the access decision is actually allowed? And at each of these, we do this on every request to an application, so the latency has to be near zero in order to not frustrate your customer, right? You're replacing a VPN, but if you're putting something in that's much heavier, you in fact create more headaches for your end users. And so what we've decided to do is attack each of these verticals with multiple solutions. The first one is you need to have a strong identity provider, and this is not an identity provider talk, so I'm not going to dive into that, but we need to attest that this is in fact a strong user. But we want to go one step further, right? If you talk about second factor, most second factors are actually phishable credentials, right, or bearer tokens. And so we need to have a phishing-resistant authentication that we use, and we at Google use the touch key, the U2F keys. The next thing is on the device itself, right? If it's a mobile device, we want strong MDM on the device. If it's a laptop, we need to ensure that the device is actually in a good state. And you can do that in several different ways, and we can talk to those. The first one is around device management. You need to make sure that you have a well-configured TLS when you make to the request. That's an obvious attack vector. You need to have a very simple rules engine when you do all of this. When you put all of this together, it needs to be very clear to an admin or a SecOps person, am I building the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Are these applied correctly against the application? And then, of course, we have the proxy, where the access controls happen. And then, of course, we terminate the TLS. And assuming everything is right there, then, of course, we allow access to the applications. That could be applications. It can be data. But think about this new cloud world. No matter what cloud you use, one of the biggest attack vectors that are out there, these are public APIs, right? If you want to write to a storage bucket, that is a public API. And so you need to be able to extend your security boundary around those APIs. And so we have solutions that we're introducing around that space, too. And so I thought maybe it makes sense to talk these briefly before I give it back to Antoine. But the first one that we did at Google is introduce this idea of an identity database, right? It has to have a rich set of metadata, which includes the users, the group memberships, job titles, offices, where is somebody coming in from. That's all par for course, I think. The next thing you need to have is strong authentication. These are primary credentials, but these are also secondary credentials. Think of the U2F keys and things like that, so you can actually test that this is the right user. And then you need to have short-lived sessions. A lot of these vendors today have sessions that go on forever. If you're accessing something that's of business-critical value, it clearly makes sense that you need to have very short-lived sessions versus if you're accessing, again, the cafe menu, those sessions can live forever. The other thing that we've introduced just in the last week is something we call endpoint verification. Endpoint verification is this idea that on your device itself, we can take a look at the security posture of the device. Is this the user's right serial number? Is the OS version up to date? Is the screen lock enabled? Is there disk encryption? On and on and on. You can capture simple metrics about the end user's device to say, yes, this is a safe device. This is not a safe device. This is a Corp device. This is not a Corp device, before you allow access to applications. And then, of course, you need a proxy. We at Google have something called the identity-aware proxy. The identity-aware proxy, in essence, is a large global-scale reverse proxy that sits in front of all of our infrastructure. And what it does is it intercepts all of the requests that are going to an application and makes a check. We said this was Ameet. We said this was Ameet's device. It's a corporate device for him, and he's coming in from an IP address that I trust. Let's allow access. Or most of those things are true, but he's coming in from a public coffee shop. Maybe we should upgrade and ask for a second factor here, right? And so those are the kinds of things that decisions you can start to make at the proxy layer. And then, of course, how do you bring this all together? You need to have what we call a control engine, an access control engine. This is where you can start to define simple rules that say, I've classified all of my applications into really, really secure, OK to leak information, and not secure at all. I need to define what those mean, right? I need to understand that if I'm coming in for a really, really secure application, it needs to come in from a trusted IP address. I can set that. I can say that, in fact, I need to know that it's a Chromebook because I trust Chromebooks more than I trust others. in our case. So I want to grant access to that device more than I would, for example, a Mac or a Windows device. And you can start to see how you would be able to create these rules. You have thousands and thousands and thousands of internal applications, or at least we at Google do, and I'm sure many of you have the same order of magnitude. You need to be able to find a scalable way of applying all of these rules against those applications. If you have to go through and do a one by one kind of application of those rules, you'll never get through it, and you'll never actually fully roll out the model. And so what we actually have done with our own access control engine that we're now productizing for users is create these ideas of simple access levels, right? To classify something as sensitive, to access it, I need to be coming in from a specific IP address, or I need to come in from a specific version of an OS, right? If something is mostly trusted, okay, it's coming in from EMEA, that's good enough, right? I know that and it's coming in from a mostly up-to-date OS. I'll allow that access to what we call mostly trusted. Or if it's an end user's tablet that they brought from home and they want to access that data, that's okay too. They can only access a certain criteria or a certain tier of applications. So I wanted to walk through an actual example of what we do at Google and what we're exposing to end users. So let's take this user. This is Joe. He's sitting in his office. He's using his Mac. We know the serial number. We know the status of the device. He's coming in. All the rules check out. He's a corporate device. He's the right person. So he can, in fact, access our bug system. So the identity-aware proxy in our case, or this global proxy, will make that evaluation and say, yep, he has to have access to business-critical systems here, right, where he can see those kinds of things. Now let's take a sort of corollary. This will seem obvious, but there's resolutions here that we should talk about, right? Again, this is Joe, but now Joe's using his tablet. And so the rules engine will say, well, this is Joe, yes, it's Joe's tablet. I know nothing about this device, and he's coming in from a public IP address. I can't allow access to that system, right? And so, and in this case, the identity-aware the proxy will say, nope, deny the access. That's an obvious kind of workflow that we're talking about here. But let's talk about some of the details here. You can start to make this a richer use case here, where you can say, maybe this is Joe, maybe this is Joe's tablet, and he's coming from a public IP address, but he still needs to do his job. He still needs to be able to access systems. Maybe not the bug tracking system, but definitely his calendaring system, definitely his email system, whatever, definitely his HR system, so he can take the time off if he needs to. We can start to come back and set rules that say, okay, this is Joe and Joe's tablet. I don't know much about Joe's tablet, but if he presents a legitimate second factor, then we can in fact allow him access to what we call middle tier applications, like calendaring and other kinds of systems. That's how we at Google resolve these kinds of problems, and these are the kinds of systems that we're now exposing with our identity-aware proxy and other set of tools for customers to use. So I'll give it back to Antoine to talk about how Veolia uses those things.
Thank you. So, thank you, Ameet. It was very funny because when we are preparing this presentation, we made the slide on each slide. And when we are discussing, Ameet say, hey, you have almost the same slides than me. So we say we have the same problem and the same security concern. These are on 4 points. First is the identity of your user. Are they the person you present to be? You need to be sure that if the device is not compromised. And you need to be sure the data transport is good. And of course, the application, if it is well protected or not. So how BeyondCorp, and thank you again, Ameet, and all the BeyondCorp teams for the helps you provide to Veolia. How BeyondCorp help us every day. I have chosen to resume a very quick list of the services we use every day to secure and monitor our GCP infrastructure. First, near the Veolia logo, is the Cloud Security Command Center. This is a very new service, and I recommend you to test it, because it will be very helpful to have on every central point all the external services of security you can choose to have, and the inventory of all your objects you have on GCP. On the first line, you see BeyondCorp, because BeyondCorp is also a team which is making some great white papers. You can read them. They are very interesting. You have also the Cloud Resource Manager with the folder, the custom roles, the AAM rules, and you have a big and a lot of works to do if you want to be the most effective company. On the second line, you have the GCP billing, because by the billing, we think we can monitor if the usage of the platform are good or not. We can detect some fraud. Maybe if on the Monday morning, I see people which are using a lot of BigQuery, maybe this is normal because we have a special request, or maybe this is not normal if the people doesn't know the best way to request BigQuery. So the billing is the key to monitor this. The second is the VPC. VPC Service Control is a new services which permits you to secure and separate some different services of a project, and let's communicate just the two BigQuery services of two different projects. You have a lot of different ways to use these services, but it's very interesting and very important. On the third line, you have Cloud AAP. And if you have seen on my two applications on the diagram, we use AAP on every App Engine services we create. Security Scanner, which is related to App Engine, it permits you to scan your application and check if you have some vulnerability on your codes. And after this, on the two line, you have more the user and employees part with the security key enforcement, with the two steps. The Chromebook migration, because migrate to a Chromebook is a little bit more secure than a laptop. I will not mention a certain operating system. The key management services for the application to store and secure your key. And on the last 2 points, they are for me the two most interesting because on my job I use them every day. First is Security Monkey. Security Monkey is an open source product provided by Netflix, and it permits you to monitor your infrastructure from AWS and GCP on just a same dashboard. So it's very helpful if you don't want to have two different solutions. And the last one is Forseti. And yesterday I was with the Forseti team, and I recommend you to test this because it's a new security open source product sponsored by Google. It permits you to have an inventory of all the objects you have. It permits you to detect some violation you have on your infrastructure and to enforce some policy. Maybe, for example, if I think that I have a port 25 open on any instance I have on Compute Engine is a problem, I say, when you detect this port is open, just quickly delete these rules. So you don't care about the rest. So now you know the different services we use. We have a new project, and we are working today with BeyondCorp teams on this. They are coming in Paris to understand what we need, and we are improving today and still tomorrow on this part. Because now we want to open our application to our customers. But you know, it's very complicated and not easy to create an identity on G Suite, for example, if you want to let's authenticate your customers. Sometimes you don't want to have to monitor this user, and of course you don't want to pay a license for a user which will be connecting on your application. So what's our ID? Our ID is very simple, and I have made a very interesting example. Imagine a case where Veolia is in charge of the water treatments of Los Angeles. I am the mayor of this city, and you agree that I have a very good promotion. So Veolia gives me the URL of the application clear that I have presented to you before. So I need to connect on this application to check if everything is okay in Los Angeles. I'm connecting to the URL. AAP say, stop, I'm here to check who you are. They bring me to a portal, a very simple page developed by Veolia, where I just need to say if I'm an internal people of Veolia or if I'm customers. On this example, I will say I'm a customer, and I'm redirecting to an IDP provider. On this example, I have choose one login, but you can use a different type and list of IDP provider. This IDP provider checked if I'm existing on his database, and if yes, and that's the most interesting part of this example, I'm connecting to this new product of Google Cloud. This name is Cloud Identity for Customers and Partners. Maybe it will not the final name, but I'm not here to make an announcement. But don't forget to follow this very interesting new product. Sorry. And this product is here for what? Is here for say my IDP say okay you are present, and now I'm connecting to the cloud identity domain of the customers of Veolia to create an identity which will be connecting the IDP provider to this domain. And now, okay, you have the permission to go to this application. AIP say, okay, I give you this application. If I was click on, hey, I'm an internal people of Veolia, I think you probably know what it will happen. I will redirect to my G Suite Veolia domain, and I will instantly connecting to this application. Don't forget the cloud identity customers and partners. And I will again say thank you to the team who is in charge of this. And I know some people of this team are here today. And thank you, Ameet, for this. So my last slide is more a funny slide. And I recommend you to connect with all the devices you have on this URL, resourcingmachine.veolia.com, now or tomorrow. You can be a resourcer too, and you can see what type of different application we can develop. And this is a game to permit you to be a resourcer. It's on App Engine also, of course. So what's the future now? The future, as I say, is open our application to the customer and develop more and more secure application on Google Cloud. Thank you. Merci.